Hello everyone and welcome to a Deck Tech on the Constructor Criticism YouTube channel. I'm Spencer, host of Constructor Criticism and Limited Time Only, two podcasts about getting better at Magic the Gathering. Today, I'm going to talk to you about the standard deck that I've been playing in Standard recently. I just won a PPTQ with it yesterday. I changed a few cards, and this is kind of a deck that people have been asking me about for a couple of weeks as people are trying to find their way into the format and kind of what they should be playing and why they should be playing it. I landed upon this deck a little while ago, trying it out while Marvel was actually still in the format, trying to figure out, people were saying that this deck could beat Marvel, so I was trying the deck out, and I kind of just stumbled upon it into this format and have really been enjoying it. So let's start with the main deck. So the first thing that people always ask me about this deck is, can I play this deck without Grim Flayer? So I'll probably do another video talking about ways that you could play a green block deck without playing Grim Flayer. There's the energy versions, which most people are coming to the conclusion that they don't like. They think that Long Tusk Cub doesn't fit into the strategy very well, and they want to try things like Sylvan Advocate or something kind of to replace Grim Flayer because of the cost. For me, I don't typically think in the terms of cost in Magic. Because of my sponsorship with Oasis, I'm able to borrow cards whenever I need them. And so for me, I'm always trying to build the best deck possible. And Grim Flayer is just really good in this deck. Having a late game 4/4 where you can double spell into 8 power was really powerful for me yesterday during the PPTQ, and it's just been really powerful for me online as well. I think that having Trample is a much bigger deal than the toughness that you might get from something like Sylvan Advocate. One of the huge benefits of Grim Flayer is that when you put counters on it through things like Nissa, Rishkar, or Verdurous Gearhulk, it's really hard for your opponent to deal with. So for that reason, I think that Grim Flayer is a really important piece of the deck. Speaking of Rishkar, we do have 2 of those in the deck after the 4 Grim Flayers. This card I've seen is a 2 of, a 3 of. I think that the problem is that the second one's usually really bad, but the first one's really important. So for that reason, I can see the reason to want 3 of them. Obviously, your best draw is like turn 1, kill their guy with a Fatal Push, turn 2 Rishkar, or turn 2 Walking. Oh my gosh, I can't even speak. Winding Constrictor, turn 3 Rishkar. So for that reason, you really want more of them. But for me, I've stuck with 2 because you can easily tutor it with things like Traverse the Evenwall to get them when you need them. And you also have some of those net draws sometimes. Next up, we have 3 Tireless Tracker. This card is really good in the deck. It's just being able to draw cards in this deck is really important. Lots of these versions play all the way up to 4 Tireless Trackers. I did cut one for some Planeswalkers, but other than that, I think the Tireless Tracker is just amazing in this deck. The importance of drawing cards, then obviously, if you get 2 counters on this at a time when you have something like a Winding Constrictor in play, it's really powerful. We have 2 Verdurous Gearhulk, really cutting down on these because of the number of Traverse the Evenwall that you get to play, meaning that you don't have to max out on these. You don't have to play 3 or 4 of these like the Constrictor decks were playing in the beginning. So we have 4 Walking Ballista. This really helps us turn on our Delirium, as well as just being able to really take over the game in a lot of spots. I had a game yesterday where I luckily was able to get 4 Winding Constrictors out, and when you have 4 Winding Constrictors out, you pay 4 mana to put 5 counters on this guy. So I was able to minus Nissa, put 20 power into play, activate this, put 5 counters on this, and just completely decimate my opponent's board. And I decimated my opponent's boards a few times with the Walking Ballista in this tournament. I think that every time I try and cut this down to 3, I think about how important it is as the pivotal roles it plays in the deck to be able to get Delirium and be able to really interact with your opponent while also playing to the board. It's just been an MVP in the deck. We have the 4-named 4 of Winding Constrictor. Card is the key to this deck. The reason this deck is good, the reason that you play this deck over something like just a straight Delirium build is the power of Winding Constrictor and the synergies that it has within the deck. We have a 1 of Blossoming Defense. This card is something you board out a lot, but it's really good in the main deck to make your opponent think about it. We have 1 of Dissenter's Deliverance. This card gets boarded out sometimes, but I think that it's a great way to get instant into your graveyard in certain matchups, as well as just a great answer to things like Torrential Gearhulk, opposing Gearhulks in these decks, things like that. 4 Fatal Push is pretty key to this deck. Between Clue tokens, creatures dying in combat, and Evolving Wilds, you really are able to get Revolt quite a bit. We have 1 Grasp of Darkness in the main deck, 1 Murder in the main deck. These pretty interchangeable in a lot of spots. Murder just being able to kill opposing Gearhulks for the mirror match. We have 2 Liliana the Last Hope and 3 Nissa Voice of Zendikar. Liliana is really important because it gets you back things like your Gearhulks and your snakes. I think that when I played one of this card, I was like really impressed with it in a lot of matchups. Then more zombies decks started popping up after the bannings, different things like that. So I increased it to 2 for the zombies matchup, as well as the Mardu matchup, where I think this card really shines. The 3 Nissa are pretty great. I think that you shave on Nissa a lot, but I think in game 1, having your deck be a little bit streamlined and having the most powerful options with your constrictors is really important. So for that reason, I play 3 in the main. We have 2 Never Return and 4 Traverse the Evenwald. 2 Never Return is, I think that if you don't have this card in your deck, I actually think you're in big trouble. It does a lot of things. Being able to just kill any Planeswalker, kill opposing Gearhulks is really important in this deck. And it's the reason it plays it over things like Murder, is just being able to kill that Gideon dead. If they have a Gideon in play for too long, or a Nahiri in place for too long, it can really run away with the game. The same thing can be true of like Nissa in the mirror, as those Nissa ultimates are really hard to deal with in the mirror, because you only have a couple of creatures with Trample and Grim Flayer and Verdurous Gearhulk to get through those plants. Traverse the Evenwald acts as, a bunch of lands in the deck, but it also acts as a great top deck in the late game, as it's so easy to get Delirium in the deck. I think that the card is pivotal, and I think it's the reason, to be completely honest, that this version is better than the energy version. Top decking a Traverse is so much better than top decking an Attune with Ether, that it is the reason that I play this deck almost entirely over the energy version of the deck. Our land base is 4 Blooming Marsh, 3 Evolving Wilds, 6 Forest, 4 Hissing Quagmire, and 5 Swamps, bringing us to 22 lands. We're only one more. We're really close to even, right? We're only one more green source than we are a black source. The reason for that is Traverse the Evenwald, so easy to get that black, and you usually are getting black first with those Traverse the Evenwald. So that's it for the main deck. In the sideboard, we have 1 Ishkanah Grafwidow, 1 Kalitas Traitor of Ghet, 2 Manglehorn, 1 Noxious Gearhulk, 2 Grasp of Darkness, 2 Ob Nixilis Reignited, 3 Lay Bare the Heart, 1 Never Return, and 2 Yahenni's Expertise. So a few of these cards have been included specifically for the Zombies matchup and other aggro matchups. That would be Kalitas and Yahenni's were not in my sideboard originally. I've included them in the deck to really help with that matchup. Yahenni's won me a game in the top 8 against Zombies yesterday, and I decided that I did need that other Kalitas. That I did need the first Kalitas that I had recently cut from my deck after a few games in that top 8. Lay Bare the Heart is a new addition to the sideboard. It shouldn't have been new. I should have had this at the PPTQ, but I basically forgot it existed and was playing Transgress instead. The real difference between the cards in this metagame is that Lay Bare doesn't grab Avacyn and Transgress does. Other than that, I think that Lay Bare is almost better in every way, so for that reason I've included it in the sideboard. As far as sideboarding goes, Ishkanah comes in against many of the aggro decks, and especially against Mardu, Kalitas, and Yahenni's Expertise come in against hyper-aggressive decks and zombies. Manglehorn comes in against a lot of decks, actually. I brought it in against Gem Gods as a 1-of to tutor off of something like Traverse the Evenwald. It also comes in against Mardu. I've even brought it in against, these Torrential Gearhulk decks. Grasp of Darkness comes in also in a lot of matchups. You really want it against Avacyn, as it can kill it for less mana with the trigger on the stack. Ob Nixilis is important for grinding matchups, and Lay Bare the Heart going down to a 3-of is because so often in so many matchups you actually only bring in 2 of them. It's only in very specific matchups like very heavy control decks that you'll actually bring in more than 2. So for that reason I was willing to cut down to 3 to give me room for that Kalitas for other matchups. So that's it for this deck. Let me know if you have any questions. Please leave a comment. I'm happy to answer them. I might do a video in the future of a deck that doesn't include things like Grim Flayer and Liliana for those looking to play a deck similar to this on a budget. I believe that if you're going to do that, you need to play the full 3 Rishkar, probably another Gearhulk, probably all 4 Nissas, and probably just find a way to really abuse the Winding Constrictor draws. And it's possible that Sylvan Advocate is a part of that. So thank you everybody for watching, and we'll see you guys all next week.